Happy New Year! The good news is that 2021 is not 2020. The not so good news is that many of the crises that challenged the world last year are unfortunately still with us. Hello, I'm Haydé Adams FitzPatrick. Welcome to Our Voices. In the next half hour, we will look back at the year that was, and we'll look ahead to the year to come. And we begin with the COVID-19 pandemic that continues to upend lives everywhere. As vaccines are being rolled out in some parts of the world, there are reports that the deadly disease is mutating, with new strains of the virus being spotted first in the United Kingdom and South Africa. Henry Ridgwell is in London for us with more.
The new variant of the coronavirus was first detected here in southern Britain in September. By November, it accounted for 25% of all new infections. And by December, that figure had risen to 70% of all new infections. Now, scientists say a virus mutating is perfectly natural. But what makes this mutation different is that it appears to be replacing the old variant of the virus. It has also affected the protein spikes on the surface of the virus itself. And that in turn affects how the virus infects human cells. And they say that the transmissibility of the new variant is up to 70% higher than the old variant. As yet, it doesn't appear more deadly than the old variant of the virus, although because more people are being infected, more people are being hospitalized, and that is putting more pressure on hospitals like the one behind me. There have been other isolated cases of this new variant identified in some other countries, including the Netherlands, Denmark and Australia, which appear linked to the outbreak here in Britain, and another variant in South Africa, which appears unrelated to the mutation here in Britain. Scientists say that the vaccines should still work against this new variant of the virus. But what it does do is show that there may be a future pathway to what they call vaccine escape, where a virus mutates sufficiently that the vaccines no longer become effective. But it will be possible in the future to adapt those vaccines to the new mutations of the virus. Now, the effect of the new variant here in Britain and the new outbreak has been profound. Much of the south of the country is in hard lockdown. Nobody is supposed to travel in or out of London and some surrounding counties. There's no household mixing, and non-essential shops and services are closed. More than 40 countries have imposed travel bans on people arriving from Britain, and there are big tailbacks at some key ports into Britain and warnings of some shortages in supermarkets. And all this comes just days before Britain leaves the European Union's Brexit transition period on January the 1st, with warnings of further disruption to come.
And that was Henry Ridgwell in London. Well, new variants of the coronavirus have been detected in other countries, including Nigeria. Authorities there say they are investigating the latest mutation. Now, although COVID-19 was the top story last year, it certainly wasn't the only one shaping our world. Earlier, I spoke to Salem Solomon about the stories that made headlines across Africa in 2020. Now, of course, Salem, one of the really standout themes we saw during the past year is how leaders handle a crisis of this magnitude, from the United States to the United Kingdom to South Africa, which is Africa's hardest hit nation. I remember when I was a reporter in the early 2000s in South Africa, Thabo Mbeki was then widely criticized as being an AIDS denialist. Now here's another health crisis, and here comes Cyril Ramaphosa with a very different approach.
The leadership is very interesting, especially because South Africa's been hit hard. And so it really plays a big role. And Tanzania is another example. When you mentioned denialism, there's been a lot of denial of the existence of the pandemic itself in the country. And another example to think about is Madagascar's president. He touted an herbal remedy for Madagascar, which is a plant mixture. And he announced that it is purported to cure COVID. They called it a miracle cure, and there was a lot of hype in the past year as everyone was scrambling to find some sort of cure for this pandemic. And shortly after, a couple of months after, in July or so, we learned that he announced himself, the president himself announced that 2 lawmakers have died from testing positive because of the infection. So not so much of a cure is what we've learned. But the pandemic has been the opportunity for leaders to emerge. foremost among them is Dr. John Nkingasong. He is the director of Africa CDC. I've had a one-on-one with him. He spent a significant amount of his time actually explaining where the continent is. He's really been the face of the continent when it comes to COVID response, and has led a way for initiatives like purchasing personal protective gears, equipment, tests. This has been one of the most visible and unifying response to the crisis in modern African history, without exaggeration.
And Salem, one of the more surprising stories we saw is what is happening in Ethiopia, where we're seeing conflict on top of a pandemic.
Ethiopia has been a long pillar of stability. This past November, Ethiopia descended into conflict in one of the regions as the federal army sought to take back control in the northern part of Tigray from the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front. It's part of the leadership in the Tigray region. Tensions have increased since Abiy Ahmed, the newly, young reform-minded Oromo ethnic group prime minister, came to power in 2018. But earlier this year, Abiy dissolved the ruling political coalition that existed in the country for more than 20 plus years, almost 30 years. It's called the EPRDF, and created a new party called Prosperity Party. The TPLF, they refused the plan, and in September, Tigray held its own regional election, and Abiy called for elections. He called the election illegal. And his minister in charge of democratization said the TPLF crossed the red line. And then we see what's happening now. The conflict has escalated, and when the federal government accused TPLF fighters of raiding a military base to steal weapons, before we know it, we have more than 50,000 people fled into Sudan. Basically, the extension of instability in that region, which is the last thing the people need.
In Nigeria, security is still a major issue, with citizens there demanding an end to police brutality and torture. All that coming to a head with the End SARS movement.
And SARS is a movement that started because of protests demonstrating against Nigeria's Special Anti-Robbery Squad, or also known as SARS. It is a police unit that has been mainly known for abusing power and has been simmering. Bottom line of that outcry was because they wanted reform, they wanted change. These protests were led by women. Women were at the center of this. They organized it from abroad, from within. But the Nigerian government vowed to make sure that there's going to be investigation and police reform, and it disbanded the SARS unit.
Is hereby dissolved.
Activists say this isn't enough. When guns are pointed at people and lives are lost, it becomes beyond just police reform at this point. It's a human rights issue. It's, other issues are compounded, and people want change. You hear that echoing either from people abroad who stand in solidarity with people in Nigeria, or from Nigerians in the country as well.
And that was VOA's Salem Solomon speaking to me earlier here in Washington. Now, staying along those themes, alleged cases of brutality by law enforcement officers in the United States sparked protests worldwide last year. The Black Lives Matter movement heightened global awareness and generated calls for racial justice and police reform. Ayen Bior covered some of the confrontations on the streets of Washington.
8 minutes and 46 seconds. That is how long Officer Derek Chauvin had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck. And the consequence of that lethal encounter is what you see around me. Thousands of protesters in D.C., potentially hundreds of thousands around the country, all demanding justice for George Floyd. Officers have broken their barriers around the other side of the fence. I believe they're trying to extinguish this fire, but for now, we're going to get away from this and get to safety.
This is not about hate.
It is now 20 minutes past the 7 p.m. citywide curfew set by DC officials. And as you can tell, these streets are not empty. They are filled with thousands of protesters, some of them young, some of them old, all of them angry, demanding justice for George Floyd. Last night, police tear gassed the protesters, and they say that they expect that again tonight, but they are not going anywhere until they get what they are demanding.
Count of three, Black Lives Matter.
We can't do anything.
We are on Black Lives Matter Plaza, and behind me are dozens, if not hundreds, of protesters who earlier this evening tried to take down the statue of Andrew Jackson, the 7th president of the United States, who was known for his brutality against Native Americans. Police responded with force. They used batons, pepper spray, and shot pepper balls at protesters who refused to leave the area. Right now, the standoff still continues, but protesters say they will not leave Black Lives Matter Plaza. So far, things have been very peaceful here, and that is not by coincidence, it is by design. It seems like this crowd tonight is trying to make sure that things stay calm.
And that was Ayen Bior. They're doing some excellent reporting. We're going to take a short break now, but first, we have a question for you. Now, we all know 2020 was a tough year. What are you most grateful for? Connect with us on social media. We would love to hear from you. Our handle is right there on your screen. You can also find us on WhatsApp. That is our number right there. Well, after the break, the fight for the youth vote in Uganda's upcoming election. We'll tell you why that country's opposition leader says he's convinced the government wants him dead. That story and more when we come back. Being part of Our Voices is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them
and bringing their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
Welcome back to Our Voices. It's one of the most important African elections to watch in 2021. Ugandan voters go to the polls on January 14th, and pop star turned politician Bobi Wine is looking to unseat President Yoweri Museveni, who has ruled that country for 34 years. Wine says government security forces are stopping him from campaigning, often with tear gas and rubber bullets. Ugandan police say they're simply enforcing COVID-19 guidelines. But Wine fears for his life, and as Halima Athumani reports, he now wears a bulletproof vest.
Singer turned politician Robert Chagulanyi, better known as Bobi Wine, has seen his campaign almost turned into a battlefield with gunshots, heavy use of tear gas and beating of his supporters by police. Now, Wine wears a bulletproof vest, saying that after 3 attempts on his life, it is clear the regime wants to kill him.
A grenade was thrown to me in Kayunga. Our car was shot at, all tires flattened, and another shot came through the windscreen. And just 2 days ago, again, our car was shot at by the police.
Police and military officials said they are enforcing standard operating procedures to protect the public from COVID-19 that Wine has failed to observe. Brigadier Flavia Byekwaso, the Uganda People's Defense spokesperson, says Wine does not understand the pandemic has gone beyond controllable levels.
The security forces are not sabotaging Chagulanyi. They are only implementing the SOPs to make sure that we do not have this pandemic of COVID-19 spreading to the population beyond the capacity that we can manage.
But Wine accuses Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni of having double standards since he too has been holding rallies with large crowds. Wine says he has no control over who comes to see him.
Every time I show up for a campaign meeting, droves and droves of people show up to show solidarity to us. These people lying on the sides of the road, we don't have control over them. And all I do is stand on my car and wave to them. Now that has been termed a crime.
On the campaign trail, Wine has about 12 police pickup trucks trailing him. He says the presence of the security teams causes delays and cuts him off from supporters. Wine has met with Uganda's Electoral Commission asking for the security forces to be withdrawn, but the military says its deployment is backed by law.
He says where the police feels that they are going to be overwhelmed, the lorries come for the military for support. So we are doing this within the ambits of law. We are doing this because the police cannot adequately dominate the entire country at the same time.
Ugandans head to the polls January 14th to elect the next president.
Many South African citizens worry what 2021 will bring, as that country fights a battle on two fronts: record high unemployment and the highest number of COVID-19 cases in Africa. South Africa has long used its growing black middle class as a yardstick to measure the nation's overall economic health. Anita Powell caught up with one young South African who says he had it all going for him: a good education and a good job. But now his middle-class dreams have been shattered.
Like many South Africans, Byekwaso had a tough year as his nation imposed strict coronavirus measures at the cost of the already struggling economy. He was laid off in June and moved in with family.
Things became difficult even at home. I couldn't provide for my family the way that I used to. And at the time I lived with my grandfather and my father, and none of them were employed. So we basically had to survive on the grants that they were receiving from the government.
Millions of South Africans are telling a similar story this year. Byekwaso is the rare South African with a college degree, an emblem of the dream of a robust black middle class. A UN report estimates that as many as 34% of South Africa's middle-class households are now vulnerable. The pandemic dealt a blow to an already contracting economy with record unemployment levels, says economist Dawie Root.
Things were pretty bad even before the beginning of this year. And then we had this virus and we had the lockdown, and everything went from bad to really, really, really bad. And I think the South African economy today it's not even in a recession, it's actually in a deep depression.
President Cyril Ramaphosa acknowledged the damage the pandemic has wrought and has urged patience. When he announced a hard lockdown earlier this year, he also announced a raft of economic stimulus measures, mostly aimed at poor households.
History will absolve me, because the determination to put things right is there. And we may be moving at a slow pace, and we may be moving at a pace where people, want faster movement. But we are painstakingly putting things right.
But many South Africans say it isn't enough. Byekwaso couldn't qualify for unemployment benefits because he had not been unemployed for long enough.
I think, unfortunately, there's a certain perspective that even though you're part of the middle class, you would still be able to survive the pandemic, even though you just lost your job, or there's always the assumption that there's still money put somewhere for you to survive, even if it's not for long enough, but there still is something for you to survive on until a certain time. And unfortunately, that's not really the case.
Root says he is fundamentally more worried about the poor, who have felt the worst effects. And he said things won't improve unless the government does something drastic. And that will again probably hurt the middle class.
There's only one thing that the Minister of Finance can do. There's really only one thing. He must spend less money. And inevitably that means he must spend less money on people. That means he must start cutting, he must start closing down things, he must close down the state-owned enterprises, he must start fire a lot of civil servants, and he must pay the rest less. That is what must happen. And that is what is going to happen. Either you do it now while you still got some control, or inflation is going to do that for you over time eventually.
Byekwaso has landed on his feet, for now, with a job at a government hospital. But will things improve for him in 2021? He's optimistic, but the numbers tell a different story.
Still ahead here on Our Voices, how a Ghanaian teacher saw the opportunity to turn the pandemic into a positive learning experience for children. And her story will make you feel like a kid again. We'll be right back.
Like Voice of America on Facebook. Follow VOA on Twitter. Join VOA on our YouTube channel. Like, follow, join VOA.
You're with Our Voices, welcome back. Now, you may have noticed that crises have a way of unlocking creativity and innovation. In Ghana, one teacher has come up with a way to tap into children's desire to explore and experience new things. And if you enjoy jumping out of boxes, investigating bugs, or making paper rockets, WONDERSPACED might be just the thing for you. This is the story of Miss Natalie and her band of wonderful explorers.
As a teacher in a primary school, I found it very difficult finding engaging, fun lesson materials and content that focused on Ghana or the continent. So what I wanted WONDERSPACED to do was to create fun lessons, books, shows, spaces where children get to discover Ghana, Africa in general, just so that they are aware that we have amazing resources, that we have a continent and country worth studying about. My name is Natalie Fordwor, and I'm the founder of WONDERSPACED. Oh, hello! Do you want to know what's in my little treasure chest? I decided to start a YouTube channel. I think it's time that we fill the market with our content, with our creations. So WONDERSPACED Explorers is a name that I've given to children who sign up for WONDERSPACED. In order to build up a creative child, it's important to develop keen observational skills and a desire to research, explore, and discover new things. It's really important that we raise children who are able to create content, who are able to invent new things, and who are able to innovate. I know I've always wanted to have an online learning platform where schools around the world, or homeschool parents, etc., can access materials for children. So this pandemic kind of forced me into that space, but then I realized that there was a whole group of new users who really wanted this service. The children have taught me a lot of things, but I think the most significant thing that they've taught me is to see the world the way they do. That kind of childlike wonder that we kind of lose as adults. I would love for there to be a WONDERSPACED learning approach. And you know how there's like Montessori, etc. I want people to say that, oh, we want to learn the WONDERSPACED learning approach or the WONDERSPACED teaching approach. Teacher training is something that's a big desire on my heart. So it would be amazing to have this, space for kids where we also have teacher training sessions on how to make your space exciting for children to learn. So yes, those are my wild dreams.
Well, if you want to catch more of Miss Natalie's shows, you can find her on her YouTube channel. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, there wouldn't be enough words or pictures to fully capture the intensity of the first year of this new decade. As we embark on 2021, we leave you with some snapshots of striking moments in the lives of people across Africa and in the diaspora. We wish you all the best in 2021. Go well. Goodbye.